Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. Now, earlier this morning, I would have mentioned to you that it's always nice when we're able to celebrate Trinbagonians who are doing big things in the world. This morning, I want to introduce you to a gentleman. He's the founder and CEO of 10 to 1. His name is Mark Kwesi Farrell. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Rockers. How you doing?
I'm good. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Now, your journey is a very interesting one, as far as I'm concerned. Now, we have something in common. We both attended St. Mary's College, right?
Yes.
So we start there at foundation.
We start on a level.
However, you also are not on the same level as me, because for starters, you would have skipped ahead in school early. You entered school, you skipped ahead early in school, but you also attended MIT at age 16.
I did. Yeah.
Tell me firstly about that initial stage of, like, you're 16 years old and you're going to college, and not just any college, you're going to MIT. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a surreal experience when you kind of think about it in hindsight. Now when I walk around and see exactly how young a 16-year-old is, right? Start to imagine you're kind of shipped off when you're going to college at that point. But I had been pretty young throughout my entire school life. So, when you finish high school at 16 and all your friends are 18, 19 years old, it's a very natural evolution to take that next step and move on to the next thing. So ultimately, relatively comfortable. I think actually a big part of the inspiration for going to MIT at the time was, there were a couple of folks down there who I recall saying that, a Trinidadian or Trinidadians couldn't compete sort of at that level, on that type of a stage. And I had a little bit of a motivation to sort of get out there and really show that, the foundation that had been laid here for me and for others in Trinidad certainly could have its mettle tested at MIT or anywhere else. So, I mean, amazing experience overall. Studied chemical engineering there. Obviously, we're a very long way away from that now as a rum salesman.
Are we? Are we
really?
Well,
yeah, true.
As a rum distiller, you kind of use chemical engineering.
Using a little bit of it sort of in the language. Yeah.
No, it's interesting because you just very politically correctly said that bad mind was your motivation.
that was the most politically correct way of saying that you ever heard, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I'm also interested in what keeps you motivated to keep, because from there you just kept growing and you kept reaching into places that you're not supposed to be, but somehow you end up in that door. Tell me about the motivation that keeps you going to do that.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of that has come from my parents, my broader family. You think about the foundation that is set for you as a little child growing up, and some of these things are almost implicit. You don't really realize them or acknowledge them at the time, but you realize as you grow older that they end up being sort of the fuel in your fire that keep you moving forward. I think that idea that there is no place and no space that I do not belong in. I have a twin sister as well, and my sister did not belong in, was something that was treated as a very foreign object for us.
Right.
And this notion that, you kind of lean in with your best foot forward, make your best effort, walk in with confidence, hold your head up high, speak with pride, and you can find a way to sort of like burst through any of those sort of invisible barriers that you see being put in front of you out there.
What would you say were some of the biggest lessons that you learned working? For example, you worked at Starbucks, but not like a regular worker at Starbucks. You're up in the C-suite at Starbucks. What some of the things that you learned that would have juxtaposed, your experiences in Trinidad, your experiences in college, and all that stuff, and compared to this, in the C-suite, in the room where it happens, as they say?
Yeah, I mean, listen, people ask me, how do you compare working, in coffee versus rum, Seattle versus New York, Fortune 500 versus early stage startup entrepreneur. Yeah. They don't feel like they have a lot of things in common to the naked eye. But in reality, Starbucks was an amazing finishing school for me when you thought about making the switch to 10 to 1, right? Howard Schultz, who's the founder and CEO, is the guy who hired me at Starbucks. Incredible guy, amazing entrepreneur, has been a great mentor for me as well. And I think when to your question, when you reflect on the experiences there that made a difference for 10 to 1, you're really seeing an entrepreneur like that up close, seeing how they operate, seeing how you build a brand with purpose. I think you're building a business and a brand through the lens of who you are and the things that you care about. That was probably the single biggest lesson that I kind of took away and applied it to 10 to 1, because as I was about 18 months into that journey, the question I started asking myself was, well, listen, if this guy Howard has built this thing over here, what would my version of building a business, building a brand through the lens of who I am, where I'm from, the things that I care about personally, what does that look like? And that is essentially what gave rise to 10 to 1.
What are the things that you care about that make you say, I want to identify with my heritage, identify with being Trinbagonian?
Well, I mean, it's that at its core.
Right.
We talk about, God is a Trinity to the bone. We have all these sort of little cultural moments that reflect our love for sense of pride, right? Sense of place. I think sometimes though we don't necessarily translate that onto the global stage in the way that we ultimately can. I think a little bit about a speech that Mia Mottley gave, Barbados' Prime Minister, early in COVID. She talked about a whole host of different things. But one thing she talked about in that speech was this idea of cultural confidence, right? And cultural confidence being so critical to us as Caribbean people.
Yes.
I'm not talking about Trinidad for a second, right? But Caribbean people in general. And it's something I've taken with me. I kind of remind myself of it on maybe a daily, sometimes a weekly basis, which is like, the things that we have here are fundamentally good enough. And we have to believe that, and we have to own that first, before you get others to really sort of invest in it in the same way. And so, my belief was that with 10 to 1 again, you kind of take some of those facets of Trinidadian culture, of Caribbean culture, you could create a product that could sort of compete alongside any of the best in the world, and tell that story with some authenticity in a way that would actually resonate.
I get it, and I 100% agree with you. What are the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur? Because you're operating on the global stage. You're not trying to start up a business in Trinidad. You're not trying to start up a business in Seattle. You're not trying to start up a business in New York. You're operating on the world stage. What are some of the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur, and how are you able to overcome them so far?
How long is this segment again? How much time do you have? 20 minutes,
Summarize.
30 minutes? Yeah. Give me the top 20. No, I mean, listen, entrepreneurial life by its very nature is a very challenging, very daunting one. And one thing people don't think about is it's a very lonely experience, fundamentally, when you think about challenges, right? And so I always try to think about sort of what are the different avenues, what are the different ways to surround yourself with, whether it's great mentors, great advocates, great advisors to support you on that journey. So I think a little bit of the solitary nature of trying to build a business or a brand is one of the major challenges. I think the other one, though, is, by nature of creating something new, you're putting something out there that has not existed before. And so, when I was saying that story about going to MIT with a little bit of the bad mind, right? Yeah. You have a lot of those doubters early on who are going to tell you all the reasons why something cannot be done, why it hasn't been built before, why it should not exist. And I think kind of taking those things on board in a way where you can almost kind of strip out the very pragmatic, practical feedback you get without the negativity that surrounds it is one of the big balancing acts or big challenges, I would say, of that early entrepreneurial journey.
It's trying to figure out the good from the bad and the constructive criticism.
Yeah. Because you can't go to the other extreme, right? And say you're just going to walk around with earmuffs on the whole time and not take anybody's feedback. Yeah. Exactly. We're not going quite in that direction,
Would you say it's a difficult process to be able to sift it out? Or have you learned how to do it over the years? Or how do you know? I mean, because somebody could come to you with the best of intentions, but the way they deliver the message is horrible, and you just say, well,
Yeah, I think about almost if you have like sine waves, like this over time. In the early days of my entrepreneurial journey, I would have a lot of highs and lows, and you get whipsawed very easily, right? You have a good meeting, it's the best meeting ever. You're going to the moon, right? You have a iffy meeting, right?
And it's the worst
meeting ever. Everything is right. You think it's going to collapse, it's going to fail, right? And over time, I think you almost learn to kind of dampen that a little bit, and sort of live in a more neutral mindset. That to me has been super important. So you kind of sit down there across from somebody, could be a potential investor, potential partner, potential customer. You don't always say yes, or you don't always say yes right away. But you almost sort of kind of keep the blood pressure from going up. Stop, listen, try to extract some of those perspectives and points of view. And I always actually kind of say in those moments, not necessarily responding right away. Take it, internalize the feedback, process it. The way you might approach it 24 hours later looks very different than the way you might approach it sort of in that moment when you're a little bit heated.
But that is lessons for life, not just business.
Well, I mean, and the two things go hand in hand, right? The two things go hand in hand. Yeah,
Speaking of which, how do you balance that? How do you balance this lonely entrepreneurial life with family life, with relaxation, with finding time for yourself?
Very difficult, very difficult is the answer, especially when you're doing something like you're building a consumer brand, right? And especially you're doing something in rum, you're out and about, you're doing events, you're hosting, tastings, all of those things.
Plenty nightlife activity.
Plenty nighttime activity, it's kind of part and parcel of it. I always tell people that I'm actually running, I have two jobs. I have a traditional consumer entrepreneur job, sort of, 9 to 6 every day. And then sort of you have the evening events and all that you're hosting. So what I've tried to do is carve out a little bit of me time on a morning. So I kind of have 7 to 9 a.m. That's pretty sacred.
You must make sure and get out of here by 7 o'clock.
Exactly. So we actually before the me time right now. Before the me time right now.
So I appreciate you taking that before time first. If you had a chance to redo anything along your journey so far, would you?
I'd redo many things.
Really?
Many things.
Like
yeah.
what? Give me one example of something you
Yeah,
redo.
I mean, listen. Life is a. I was reading this Michael Jordan quote the other day where he talked about the fact that every game that he played, you either won or you learned a lesson.
Right.
Right. So you didn't take it as a loss, but you took it as a lesson learned. And over the course of 20 plus years now, since I left the shores of Trinidad, career in consulting and venture capital and Starbucks and 10 to 1. I mean, there's lots of different mistakes you make along the way, right? And I think that's inevitable. When you talk about sort of what would I do over, what have I taken from all of that? I think I see more value in those trials and in those lessons than I did early on. And I think we all have this fear of failure and this question of sort of what happens if you get to the bottom of the abyss.
Yeah.
And now having had some of those moments, some of those trials, you actually realize that it's all okay on the other side. And I wish my younger self knew that and understood that, right? The people that believe in you, no matter what, right? Your first business mightn't work, your second one mightn't work either, whatever it is. They believe in your talent, they believe in your personality, they believe in your drive and your ambition. Those things are constants. And I think in those moments of challenge, again, sort of earlier in my career where some of that faith would have been wavering, if I had a time machine, I would come back and assure that younger Mark, right? That on the backside, it'll all be all right. Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting things that I saw in the promotion of the room is that you used Ciara as a brand ambassador. I don't know what the actual title that she would have held is at that point in time.
She's an investor and a owner
okay.
of the
So
brand.
that's what I wanted to find out about, her relationship with the product itself. So she's an investor. How come, why Ciara?
So two things there. One, the Ciara relationship came about very organically, right? From my time in Seattle, we had a bunch of friends in common. Right, her husband was the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, and a friend had sent her a bottle of 10 to 1 as a little moment of celebration.
Okay.
She tried it, she had a drink, she liked it, she wanted to get in touch. They were interested in perhaps exploring something in the spirit space.
Okay.
And so the conversation came about very organically, right? I always tell people this is not a function of being out there pounding the pavement, looking for a celebrity of any sort. So first, I think inbound, and then second, when you think a little bit about, why Ciara? What's the resonance? What's the fit? If you look at the ambition of 10 to 1, we are trying to, as I said before, take elements of not just rum culture, but Caribbean culture and put them out there on an international stage. So you're trying to find someone who has an audience that can help you to do that.
Right.
And if you look at Ciara as a person, as an artist, as an entertainer, she has a lot of elements that are in common with people from the Caribbean. She's not trendy.
She likes to wine.
She does like to wine.
She likes to wine.
She does like to wine. But also, her spontaneity, her joie de vivre, she has this kind of energy about her that I think actually fits a lot of the core DNA of the brand. And so because of that, I actually thought that it could be a great fit to have her be part of that story going forward.
Well, I mean, I look forward to hoping that we have some Trinis on the story too at some point in time.
Yeah, well, listen, who you're campaigning for?
Anybody I'm not campaigning for nobody in particular. I just say, I put Trinidad and Tobago.
Listen, and I totally agree. I mean, a big part of 10 to 1 from day one has been this idea of platform.
Yeah.
So actually, if you look at the brand, you'll see that everything we've done has somebody else involved, right? We did a design collaboration actually with Levi Marcus 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Young Trinity designer, super talented.
Yeah, I remember
we did
that.
A piece internationally last year that had both Levi and Jimmy October on it as well. Whenever we're hosting events up there, we're doing it with members of the Caribbean diaspora. We did a Michelin star Jamaican chef. Right, hosting a dinner alongside us in New York last week for Caribbean Heritage Month. And so if you actually follow the story, integrating folks from in and around the Caribbean has been very core to everything we've done.
Well, Mark, let me say congratulations on the brand and congratulations on all the successes so far. And thank you so much for coming in and joining us.
Appreciate the ruckus, man. Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Kwesi Farrell, the founder and CEO of 10 to 1, just giving us a bit of his story there. We'll take a quick break and come back with more inside the Now Morning Show. Stick around.